There's not going to be a lot of a relief on inflation because if we pump another $600 billion free cash, which is basically what this Build Back Better is, into the market after putting $6 trillion of free money in, there's a reason we have inflation. We just print too much money. And so, you can be pro or con the bill, but the fact is it's free money. And that's going to be difficult next year as inflation will continue, I think, to be around 6, 7, 8%. While meanwhile, it's very hard to get that kind of return on any kind of fixed income vehicle. So I would think investors will still favor equities, but we'll have a lot more volatility in the market over the next 12 months.
Kevin O'Leary, a famous Canadian businessman and Shark Tank investor, once stated, "Money equals freedom." The wealthy are well aware of this. While money cannot purchase freedom, having enough money to satisfy your basic requirements, such as food and shelter, allows you to choose what you want to do and when you want to do it. Are you fed up with your employer or your job? You'll have the option to leave if you so desire, making any employment more appealing. Do you want to go on a holiday to Hawaii? No problem. You choose your own hours and decide how early or late you want to work. Do you want to start a new business? You have the financial resources and networking contacts to follow your passion. What happens if you become ill? You have the means to pay for the greatest doctors and medical care. Kevin once said, "You may lose your wife. You may lose your dog. Your mother may hate you. None of those things matter. What matters is that you achieve success and become free. Then you can do whatever you like."
Well, what's changed in the narrative of the market in July specifically was the idea that we actually could have an engineered soft landing as opposed to a hardcore recession. And that while that was a 10% probability just 90 days ago, it's a 50-50 bet right now. And so as a result, investors are starting to place bets in places that they have historically known come back quickly after a recession. So tech, for example, got absolutely slaughtered, and yet very large names are selling at a discount to where they traditionally were just 3 months ago. And so they're picking up a bid now. You're starting to see that. And then the results coming in, like the Amazon results, even Microsoft sold off, still had strong outcomes. So the market's kind of debating where to go in a soft landing. And there are some sectors that'll do better than others. And on top of all that, you've got to change the political environment. The Build Back Better bill is probably going to arrive under $1 trillion. While it's very inflationary, it's a big peel back from the $3 trillion proposed originally. If it passes at all, I mean, it's still a debate as we get to the midterms. I like the market right here. I like buying things at a discount. And July taught every investor that, age-old adage, you can't time the market. If you were not in the market in July, you might have missed 50% of this year's returns. I'm not as optimistic on supply chain. I live with it every day across 50 different private companies we're investors in. We monitor this on a weekly basis. It's still very broken. It's really hard to get product out of the ports. Very, very difficult sometimes when you're manufacturing something and you're missing primary parts, it slows the entire process down, and that's exactly the situation we're in. Also, for every job we have open, we're having a really hard time filling it. We're in a really strange situation now. There are, 2 jobs for every available employee in America. And so this is unusual that we'd be in technically what should be a slowdown according to, many market pundits, and yet we're at full employment, under 4% unemployment right now. So it's challenging. I think the way to think about it is there's not going to be a lot of a relief on inflation. Every recession has its own personality. This one is different. There's no question about it. It's self-imposed. There's 2 major sources that consumers feel in inflationary times that usually trigger a recession. One is energy prices and food prices, and we have inflation in both of those. But they're all in some ways self-inflicted. Energy is just bad policy, shutting down pipelines, removing the leases from the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska. All of that was a mistake. Can't have an economy without hydrocarbons, and now we've figured that out. We're trying to change it in this bill a little bit. So hopefully that can be fixed, but it'll take a long time. And here's the primary reason that nobody really talks about. We haven't built a refinery in this country since the 70s. We are down. We need 3 more refineries, and the administration recently canceled one that was about to come online. So we can't actually make any more gasoline than we're making right now. And hopefully we don't have a catastrophe in one of the existing refineries, like a flood or a storm or whatever, that takes more capacity offline. So that's very, very broken. Even the visit that Biden made to Saudi Arabia asking for more crude, they said to him, what's the point of us shipping more crude to you? You can't refine it. It's a good point, but I think it's another mistaken policy. Food price inflation has a lot to do with supply chain breakdown. There are parts of the country that are not served protein because they can't get the truckers or they can't get the logistics worked out. Hopefully that gets fixed. But this recession or this slowdown doesn't look like it's going to be a hard one. It's going to be an economic slowdown, but probably not as harsh as historic recessions that usually last for 18 months. And I think the primary reason is free money from helicopters never stops. We're printing more and more and more money than ever before in any economy ever. And if this bill goes through, it's even more money. And the only negative to that is perpetual inflation. I'm giving them more credit than I would have 90 days ago, because this last rate hike of 75 basis points with more dovish, verbiage, if you want to call it that, the idea that they could pause as they see what the outcomes are going to be. The market took that 75 basis point rate hike and actually celebrated it, that it wasn't 100 basis points, and that Powell was talking about maybe being stop and see what the results are of these moves in assessment if the data changes. But I would say there's probably another 75 basis points of rate hikes before he stops. But even that leaves us at historically low interest rates. So it's not as impactful as history in other times, the 70s, for example, when we had interest rates as high as 17, 18, 19%. We're not in that place right now because this economy is far more productive. When you have a strong economy and the metric you look at is employment, it's not really necessary to keep printing money. I mean, we have an extraordinary situation here with the back end of the pandemic, the last 12 months, we kept printing money and incentivized people not to go to work, which is, if you look at how broken transportation is right now, we can't get people to come and work at the airlines. We can't get people to work in security. We've canceled 20% of all the flights in America. Ask anybody that's taken a trip lately to any major airport. It's a disaster. Part of that is a result of just giving free money to everybody all of the time and saying, look, stay at home, stay on your sofa. We've had a whole bunch of people just go out of the economy because their bank accounts are fat. They've got lots of free incentives. Now, many of these programs have stopped, but it was a lot of money, and it may take a year or two before people say, well, there's no more free cash. I got to get back to work. But that's part of the problem. And the other area that is concerning is when you have a digital economy, which is what emerged out of the pandemic, where everything is done online and people don't have to go into the office anymore, and by the millions they're not, you have a new economy. You have something that never existed before, and you've got to understand what that economy is before you start stimulating it with even more free money. Even tax policy, the idea of a 15% minimum corporate tax rate, that's not a good move because you want to keep our economy competitive. And the whole idea is, when you look at a bill like the Build Back Better bill, does that make America more competitive or less competitive? And I'd argue less.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Want to learn more about millionaires? Watch these 2 videos.